And it's easy to sort of say, like, I'm not interested in this thing. And so I'm going to let that distance, I'm going to not engage in that thing. Or you can decide, you know what, it's worth it to be fully engaged. And I'm going to show my affection that way.
Hello, hello.
Rob Patterson, good to see you.
You as well. You as well. I was a little bit late today. You know what really pisses me off, Dave?
What is that?
When you use someone else's space and they don't have it perfectly set up so that when you're running late, you can just jump right in and be ready for recording a podcast episode with your friend and co-host.
Yes.
Isn't that it's infuriating? Is it not?
Outrageous. Outrageous. Yeah. Especially if it's a spouse that you live with. Would be really outrageous.
Yeah, part of the reason I was running late today is um I record in my wife's office and I had to move some stuff around in order for me to be prepared
Mhm.
today. And obviously I was not prepared to have to move anything around. So um I was thinking to myself, well, Jen, get your shit together. You know that I'm going to be recording. Clean up the desk. She'll hear this and it's going to be it'll be an interesting conversation for the two of us to have.
You know what's funny, Rob, is that one of our other coworkers, like, follows our social media clips, and I would say that, like, I mean, it seems it seems like every other video that we post, she clips a segment of what we've posted and sends it to me on Instagram, and her tagline is, "My stupid bitch wife." Because she feels like we all all that we do is we get together and complain about the women in our lives. Well, I'm sure this will be also clipped as
But I think the difference there is, I mean, that's just the way I would say you are too. It's just part of our nature. It just we make fun of people, we make light of things. So my wife does not take that personally, having lived with me and known me for as long as she has. So
yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm thinking today's episode is episode number 2 on John Gottman. So I'm looking forward to hearing how you how are you and Jen gonna work together with this intro?
right. So if we take a step back, so last week we started talking about John Gottman's book, The Seven Principles for Making Marriage Work. And you started talking about the four horsemen or the kind of four biggest issues that he found in some of his research that might predict the dissolution of a relationship or of a marriage.
Mhm.
And so, what we wanted to do this week is talk about the opposite side. What can you do? What does he suggest that you do to create a strong, sustainable relationship, a strong, sustainable marriage?
Mhm.
So, I want to lead us through a conversation here, but I'll first acknowledge, I mean, there are seven principles here. We could probably do a podcast on each of them. There's a lot there. There's a lot to talk about. So this will be just more of an appetizer for everyone who's listening to better understand some of what he's talking about. Certainly would encourage folks to read the book if this interests them, because there's a lot there. I mean, you have a lot of experience, even using this in your professional career.
Yeah, so my master's degree is in marriage and family therapy, and I would tell you that Gottman, I mean, it's been a while since I've graduated, but I can tell you when I was in school, this was, it was the best practice, and I would say by a long shot. Like, I think it's very well respected. There's a lot of how to be in a marriage books. I think this one, from both a tactical standpoint and a like the theoretical underpinnings of it, of his approach, make a lot of sense and are it's very comprehensive. I guess I would say it that way. So I'm looking forward to talking about it. I really think it's very valuable.
Yeah. So the spin I'd like to take on it, though, is I want to focus on certainly marriage and romantic relationships as we go through these seven principles. But I was also thinking it would be interesting to talk through how this might apply in other situations. So with friendships, with, relationships with family members, relationships at work, so professional relationships, which is again something we have a lot of experience with doing the work that we do. And so I'd like to look at it from a couple of different perspectives as we go through some of this, because as I was preparing for the episode, when reading the book, you know, I, I came across a lot of applications to professional relationships and leaderships at work. So
Mhm, mhm.
so let's hit it. We're gonna go ahead.
Can I say I just want to frame it up. I would say just as from my perspective, what differentiates Gottman's approach, I think, from what had been done before him, and a lot of kind of the conversation about relationships is he is really interested in people navigating conflict in a healthy way and turning towards conflict.
Hmm.
The mechanism behind that I think is really important, which is if you think about any relationship with anybody who you really feel close to, the glue in your relationship is vulnerability and transparency. If you like think about anybody you really care about, you have probably been in knockdown, drag out fights with them. They they know who you are. You have had disagreements and you've come through those disagreements. If you try to navigate a relationship, I'll say this way, if you go through through a marriage and you progress to a place where you're so tired of each other that you don't want to have fights, and you're like, it would just be better if we didn't talk about this thing, or it's better if I'm just defensive and shut you down, or it's better if I'm just, if you essentially move away, you avoid as much friction, but you end up distancing yourself. And Gottman's work really pushes people towards each other in a healthy way. Like that's the theoretical principle behind it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I can't remember if I made this joke in our last episode or not, but when I'm working with people, I will oftentimes say if we weren't inherently as a species conflict avoidant, then you and I wouldn't have jobs.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I think about that as I was reading through these seven principles. Is yes, it's very pro addressing conflict in a healthy but direct way,
Hmm.
which is something that for me just seems second nature, having done the work that I do for the past 10 years. But to your point, was a bit maybe different
Yeah.
when this book first came out, what, 30 or so years ago
Yeah.
or
99.
longer? Yeah.
99.
Okay.
So yeah, 20,
Um,
geez,
yeah.
25 years ago. It's amazing. Like, gosh, I feel like I was just, just, yeah,
um, so it certainly seems to have had an impact,
yes.
even outside of relationship and marriage counseling.
Hmm. Hmm.
So what we'll do here is I will describe each of the seven principles. We'll start with, you'll go one each, and
Hmm.
then we'll talk about what it means, and then talk about different applications.
Hmm.
The first principle here is what he refers to as enhancing your love maps. The way I think about what he thinks of love maps here is more just, knowing the values, the needs, the preferences, the desires of your partner in a romantic relationship. It's knowing the person so that you understand why they may react the way they do. What's important to them, what's not.
Yeah. I think that there's two pieces of it. At least the way like have thought about this is one part of it is remembering that you're or discovering that you and your partner are growing together, or the things that are important to you, your fears, your aspirations, whatever, those will evolve as your relationship evolves. And if you don't talk about those things and allocate time to talk about the kind of the progress of yourself and the relationship, then you can kind of, without knowing it, get further and further apart. So Gottman has, and people that sort of follow his work have, there's different workbooks that you can use where you have a date night and you're on a sort of a schedule. Here are the topics we want to talk about on this date, in an effort to add some structure around how do we stay in contact with each other. What are the questions that would help me know who you are in 2025, and how has that changed over the last 10 years?
My wife and I I don't think we've ever done anything that structured before. But we will every once in a while when we have a date night or something like that, or be on a vacation, which this is where it's just the two of us. We'll talk high level about just who we were when we met, who we are now, what are some similarities, what are some differences, things like that.
Mhm.
We just even recently had a conversation about just different preferences and values. We have a lot of course, overlapping values. But for instance, my son is about to turn 5,
Mhm.
and for little kids' birthdays, there's a lot of stuff. We have little goodie bags. There's a pinata. There's all the plates and the plastic spoons and everything like that. Drinks, all this stuff. Something that I will key in on more so than the average person is just all this stuff, especially all the what I would call cheap plastic crap that comes with having a party.
Yeah.
That grates on me. I'm not as granola as I used to be, Dave.
Because of the environment it grates on you?
That's part of it. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Yeah. And so my wife knows this about me. And I also try to do a better job myself of not pointing out how wasteful some of the things that we do for parties are. Even though as soon as I see a balloon, that's the first thing I want to say is guess who doesn't need balloons? A 5-year-old doesn't care if there's a balloon at their party. Like that's what goes through my head. Like
Hey,
we don't
what
need balloons.
I would disinvite you to the party. Oh, dad's home. He's popping all the balloons.
That would defeat the purpose. We shouldn't buy them in the
Yeah,
first place. Like, there's no need for
it's
that.
burning the balloons.
So I don't say that specifically anymore, but the thought does occur to me. Like if I was the only person planning this party, it would look a little bit differently than it does.
Mhm.
But I don't say those things as much anymore. Um, but we were talking about something recently, and she pointed out to me that I was starting to talk about this type of stuff again, and that I really needed to kind of cool it down. And she was right because I agreed. It said, "Hey, for big events like parties, I need to get over myself." But it
Hold
was
on,
difficult.
hold on. You're at the party and Jen comes over has to come over to you and go, "Hey."
Oh no, no, no! This is planning. This has not happened yet.
Oh, planning. Okay, you're getting rent.
Uh-huh.
She's like, "You
Yeah,
are already a problem."
right.
Okay.
Yes, that's it. And she was accurate. I was just thinking about this principle, and it made me think, like, yeah, having those consistent conversations about what's important and why to each of us separately, and of course us as a couple is important, so that when she sees me or hears me say something, she understands at least why I'm saying it.
Right.
She may not agree with it.
Yes.
She doesn't. Um, but she at least understands why. So it's not going to hopefully escalate to something uh,
Yes.
even more into a
Mhm.
conflict because of that.
So when we talk about that, so it's funny you're bringing up and you're like thinking about other relationships, and this is a tough one because it's like if you if if you said, "Hey, David, let's go get some coffee, and I'd like to talk about you know, your life's aspirations and your anxieties," I would probably not be interested in that conversation. Do you think? I mean, is there a way to apply this to regular relationships or relationships at work?
So the first thing that came to me was in like a reporting relationship
Uh-huh.
where and even so there's a reporting relationship or like a team building sort of application where maybe we're not going to go as deep, but I have done work with teams before that are new, growing quickly, or struggling. And part of what I'll do is have these folks complete a couple of different questionnaires that get at just style at work, preferences, things like that, and
Mhm.
then present that back to them. And we've
Mhm.
even done some of this stuff in our organization.
Yep.
And again, not that it helps us, develop some shared value or values or anything like that, but it helps us better understand, I think, the other people in the team. So that's
Mhm.
not exactly a one-to-one comparison between, I
Mhm.
think, what Gottman is saying and what I'm explaining, but that was the closest thing that came to me when I was thinking through this.
Yeah.
What comes to mind for you?
Well, I think that It's interesting. I mean, I guess I'm just sort of reflecting on my own like limitations because if you said to me, David, I'd like to go, let's go get a beer and I'm going to talk about your whatever, your dreams and anxieties and whatever, I would be like, no, thank you. But it would bring us closer together, right? Like the intervention is a valuable intervention if the goal is connection. In a, in a friendship, maybe, maybe we're happy with the level of connection and we're not like aspiring for more depth. Whereas in a romantic relationship, the sort of the assumption is that you are trying to create as close of a bond as possible. Like there's less of a need for a barrier there. And then I was thinking, like, well, what's wrong with me that I feel like I got to keep you at arm's distance? Like, why, maybe it shouldn't be different. And maybe I was thinking like back to our toxic masculinity episode.
That's what I was thinking when you were talking about it.
I don't have fears. What are you talking about? I'm not afraid of anything. You know what I mean? Like maybe that's what's going on here.
Sure. That's part of it for me too, is when I think about friends of mine, male or female, I'm not having those types of conversations with them. And I think depending upon how long I've known them, I can intuit some of that. I can figure it out, or I think I know.
Hmm.
And so it just happens. Like with you, I think I know some of that,
Hmm.
even if we haven't had hours of conversation about it.
Yeah.
And for others, I don't.
Yeah.
And depending upon the person or the strength of my relationship with them, I don't really ask.
Hmm.
But I do feel like there is a this is my assumption only, that there is more of a male female difference there that may go back to toxic masculinity. To part of what we're talking about there is because I feel like the women in my life maybe aren't going to again talk as much about this, but are more likely to talk about this type of stuff
Yeah.
than the men in my life tend
Yeah.
to be. Would
Yes.
you agree?
100%. I was thinking, I mean, I've read the book. I went to lot of school for the for this. If I went to Allison and was like, I'd like to go out and let's talk about like how we are progressing in our lives and what we're excited about and what we're anxious, she would be so excited. You know what I mean? Like she would love it. And I just have never brought it up, not in years. So yeah,
Well, yeah. So Allison, if you're listening, it sounds like Dave's inviting you to a structured date night.
yeah, that's what I'm working with is the structure. But yes, it is a very good practice.
Yeah. I want to move on to the next one here. So, second principle, nurture your fondness and admiration. So, I'll describe it and then you tack on here, Dave. So, this principle is more about focusing on what you really like, admire, enjoy about the your partner, your spouse, the person you're with. Um, and so again, I think that there's some vulnerability, as you said, to actually have that conversation.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, And so the downsides there would be if you're not someone who is very equipped or comfortable having more of those vulnerable conversations, then doing it may be a bit difficult for you. You may be tenuous in your actual execution of it. But I think that makes a ton of sense, doing more of that to build more connection.
And
And as I was reading that, I was thinking, that's something I could also work on personally.
I'll tell you like how I would handle it as like a therapist. Because to me, this was when I think about like the general marriage interventions that I would offer, this was like the easiest one and the most impactful, which was I would ask people the question, how did you fall in love? Tell me the story of how you met. What'd you like about this person? Like, who was the person that said, I love you first? What did you feel? Who made the first move? And invariably, people talk about that like process and moment with, like love in their eyes and they're proud of what they went through and they're excited about it and they talk about it together. It's like an immediately connecting thing. And so I think this is really about like kind of remembering that and getting in the habit of saying, I like this thing about you. I have always liked you annoy the hell out of me over here. This thing, I really, right? You're talking about it and communicating it.
Again, it makes a ton of sense.
Mhm.
I distilled it maybe or oversimplified it into like a love language thing.
Mhm.
Like, this is words of affirmation,
Uh-huh. Mhm.
and I am more of an acts of service person, and so I don't always think about this as much.
Yeah. I have a I mean, I like what is it, Chapman? Who wrote, The Love Languages? I think it's Chapman. But, like, I love the book or I love the idea of the book, but I do feel like it's oftentimes one way where it's like, "I have my love language, and you better figure it out and serve me."
Right. Right.
Like, "Well, wait a second, the other person has a love language too that you should be looking for."
Mhm.
Uh, and I
And
do
acknowledging.
yeah, and acknowledging, and I think Gottman does a better job of sort of saying it should be both of those.
Yep. Yep.
I think as a husband, though, I think the I think I do this well. This nurture like, I think I communicate that. Uh, we should do you know what we should do is a separate episode where we bring our wives on and get and, like, the other one of us can interview the wife to get the feedback.
I know, I definitely think that that should happen given what we've talked about this episode and last. Like,
Yeah.
it seems like a missed opportunity for us not to do that.
Yeah, because 'cause I'm like, "I think I'm great at that," and Allison will be like,
Uh-huh.
"You're the worst." Yeah.
And then we can tell our wives what we think they're really good and not so good at,
Yes.
and then
Yeah, I'd like to also give
our colleague that you're talking about will then clip all that and send it to you. So,
yeah.
um, I think this one has also some, uh, parallels to at least a professional setting.
Mhm.
So for me, what came up was, the focus on gratitude, positive psychology, kind of talking about what you enjoy about someone, focusing on strengths over areas of opportunity. Again, not necessarily a one-to-one connection, but there's certainly some overlap there.
Mhm. I think you actually do this well in a work environment. I don't know if you're intentional about it, but I think you do validate what people do well pretty regularly at work. Do you do that deliberately?
Yes, and I think that's it. Is it's deliberate,
Uh-huh.
and then at home or with friends and family, it's not as deliberate,
Mhm.
and so it's not as top of mind.
Mhm.
So that's probably why it's less noticeable to some people that, I know outside of work.
Your wife. In
For example.
somebody, yeah.
All right. Anything else you would say about nurturing your fondness and admiration, Dave?
No, I mean, I just think I think it's super important
Yeah.
is what I would say is I put a lot of value on that.
Mhm. And I like what you said in particular too. It's just when you stop and actually talk about what brought you together, what you originally enjoyed or loved about the other person. I mean, it is difficult to maintain maybe that same level of anger or frustration or whatever it is,
Yeah,
contempt
yeah.
to that with that person.
Mhm.
All right, next one. This is something you talked about earlier. Turn away, or excuse me, turn toward each other as opposed to
Mhm.
away.
Mhm.
So you mentioned this earlier on. Describe this one a little bit more.
I guess there's 2 things, like, in general, Gottman is saying turn towards your partner as far as, like, there's friction, like, we don't want distance, we don't want if you remember from last week, we're talking about being defensive or stonewalling or criticizing, those are all things that are creating distance, contempt, and in general, he's saying if there's friction, you wanna talk through it. This specific, principle of marriage is really I'd say what I would also add to it, it's kind of what we're talking about as far as the, love languages, and it's about, like, how you have conversations. Some people show their love through acts of service
Yep.
or affection, and sometimes we don't clock it when somebody is showing affection
Yeah.
because our way. And I think this is really about, like, leaning towards the other person and finding ways to show affection. And
Yeah.
what stands out to me is this has never happened to me, this is hypothetically, okay? But my wife comes home from work and she's talking about a conflict that she's had with a colleague or coworker. And I find myself being like, "Oh god, how long is this I don't care." Right? Oh my god, right? And it's easy to sort of say like, "I'm not interested in this thing, and so I'm gonna let that distance I'm gonna not engage in that thing." Or you can decide, "You know what? It's worth it. to be fully engaged, and I'm gonna show my affection that way. My act of commitment to this interaction. I'm gonna show this person that I totally am bought in to this thing. Or like if they're working out, if they're starting a new workout, you have a choice as a partner to, go get the same foods and eat the same thing and be on the journey together, or you have a partner, a path which is, hey, that's your thing. Go do it on your own. I'm gonna do my own thing. And I think the goal is, can you find ways in your relationship to grow together so that you're connected to what's happening all the way through?
Yeah, I think you're describing it really well. Gottman describes them as bids for attention and interaction.
Mhm,
And then again, it's the choice that you have as a member or as one person in that relationship to say, I'm going to again focus, move toward and focus on the person, or I'm going to say, uh-huh, and then continue doing
mhm, mhm.
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think for me, again, it's probably a mixed bag if I'm someone who does this. I think there's certainly times when I do. Like my wife owns her own business. And so when she has topics that she wants to talk about her business, I try to be there because she owns a small business. There, it's I think it's 4 people. And so there are fewer people maybe for her to spitball ideas with. Whereas, I have, 20 something people I can spitball ideas with if I need to. And
Mhm,
also just really interests me that she, her business in general. And so I find that to be something, not only do I want to support her, but it interests me as well.
mhm, mhm,
And then there are probably other times when she wants more of my focus and attention, and I don't get it. I would say outside of romantic relationships, this one, what I was seeing here, it caused me to think more of my relationship with my kids, my little kids,
mhm,
like needing and wanting a lot of attention
mhm.
and me being not always as focused on them as I could be.
It's a good point, and I think I do not. I think with Allison, I do a pretty good job. With my kids, I do my best, but it's harder because, like, Lino's into origami, and he'd like to fold 6 hours a day, and it's hard but if you think about, like, how he experiences my love, if I sit down with him and make a ninja star with him, he really feels connected.
Hmm.
Again, I told you my stepdad, like, growing up, even today, has always done a really good job of this. I don't know if I've told you this. I think we've talked about it. Like, when I was in grad school, I had a Sega Genesis, and I would play Tiger Woods golf. I'm in Los Angeles. He's in Monument, Colorado. He buys a Sega Genesis, and would play, Tiger Woods golf with me. Like, we would put the phone on, and we would put, he doesn't want to play Tiger Woods golf, but it's an opportunity for him to talk to his son for 45 minutes. Or when I start cycling, he goes and buys a bike. Or when I started a YouTube channel, he was like, "How do I start a YouTube channel?" Like, he does a very good job of mirroring what am I interested in, and by buying into that, then I feel much more connected to him. It's a really valuable, but you have to be able to get, like, out of yourself, above yourself, to engage in things that aren't inherently interesting to you. Yep.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's a difficult thing. As a parent, I think I'm better at this on weekends than I am during the week. During the week, it feels like, all right, this needs to get done.
Yeah.
And on
Yeah.
weekends, I try to be more mindful of it.
Yep. Yep.
So, all right, I think that's all I wanted to say there. Let's move on.
This next one's a growth area for me.
What? So, me too. The next one is let your partner influence you. So, as Gottman would say, a relationship thrives, it is at its strongest when both people have a say, when decisions and are made through the perspective of both individuals, and that the thoughts and ideas of both of you emerge in whatever decision is made.
I love this in principle, okay? It's a great principle for other people, but for me, I would prefer to maintain the power, and I'm working on it. I can be a little bit controlling, Rob, both with my wife and my kids, and it's a challenge. And I don't know why I have the need to be in control or in power, but because I don't think like outside of my like close relation, my family, I don't think I'm that controlling.
Yeah, I would say I don't find you to be a super controlling person. In fact, I wish you'd give a shit about more.
Yeah, but I don't know. There's a certain thing. I mean, I'm not controlling about dinner, but if it's like a financial decision, or if it's like how the family's going to operate, or like I don't know. There's certain things where I'm just like, this is I really struggle to sort of go like, whatever and what I do, this is not a best practice. When I'm not happy with a decision that's been made without me, I'll just go, "Oh, you're the boss. Hey, I'm here to support you." Like a passive aggressive comment like that, not the best strategy.
So yeah, everything you say resonates with me as well. In fact, in preparation for this conversation, it got me thinking a bit more about that episode we did on self righteousness because I would say I am least influenceable if something we're talking about gets at a value of mine or something I feel to be really important. So we were talking earlier about, like my environmental stance. Like
Mhm.
it's really difficult for me to get over that, even though objectively, the fact that we have two kids and two parties a year where we're a bit more what I would consider to be wasteful is not a big deal. But it just like I have an instinct. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, we shouldn't do
Yeah.
this. Like, no, we should have this type of party. We should have fewer of these things. And so it's there that I probably am least influenceable. Although, again, I've come around there a bit more. But yeah, I like to be in control. So I constantly work on that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's this is important for 2 reasons. The first reason is, obviously you think about a relationship like it should be a collaboration, you should be equal partners, and part of being equal partners is that you make decisions together. I think another part of it that makes it really important is it also shows your level of respect for the other person. If you're always in charge, if one partner is always in charge and it's their way or the highway and they're the like I love to tell the kids, dad's the boss or mom's the boss, right? But if you operate your relationship where one's the boss, then the other one is like the domestique that doesn't really whose opinions don't really matter. And I think that's a pretty toxic dynamic to create in a relationship.
Definitely. Um, I think this one also has some easy correlates to a professional setting. And I just think of more participatory decision making in organizations or in teams. So if you have a leader who actually cares about what other people have to say and does something with that feedback, at least most of the time,
Mhm.
right? I mean, there's tons of research to suggest that it creates a lot more engagement, excitement, energy for those individuals who work for that leader,
Yeah. Yeah.
as opposed to one who just says, this is the way we're doing it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Next one, number 5, solve your solvable problems. So this is one that again I'd be curious to hear a bit more how you would describe it here, but the definition that I have here is using more specific conflict resolution strategies for issues that can be addressed versus those that may be more that can be addressed maybe more easily. They're a bit more on the surface level to build the muscle before you maybe dive into more persistent or deeper type of issues. So the sense I get from this one is if you don't have this muscle built, if you don't have this skill set developed yet, then don't go at the deepest issue that you might have in your relationship.
Yeah.
Start small, start surface and go deeper over time.
Yes.
Would you
Yeah.
describe it the same way?
Yeah, so this one and the next one are related, right? When you walk into a relationship, you everybody comes with baggage, and there are deep struggles that we all have, and trying to dive into working through those struggles and how those struggles relationship is like not the first place you want to start. You want to get good at navigating the sort of the standard run of the mill conflict. And it's really easy in a relationship to go, it's not that big of a deal. I'd rather not fight about this thing. Right. So Gottman saying turn towards your partner. If you're upset about whatever, the fact that that your partner keeps throws their clothes on the floor or doesn't do their dishes or whatever, right? If you just go like, it's fine, no big deal. And I'm just going to put the clothes away for them. That way we can avoid conflict. I'm like reminded of when I remember when I was in college, I had a roommate that would say, like, I've never fought with my girl. We have such a great relationship. We never have ever had a single fight. They aren't still together. Right. That doesn't, it's not a sustained strategy. You want to be able to fight in a healthy way. And you want to, that means you have to deal with the things that are even the things that are minor so that when something significant comes up, you can work through it.
Right, yeah, yeah, you have that skill set
Mhm.
to address.
Mhm.
Yeah, I find that interesting too, and, when I was younger, I probably would have thought the same thing, like, yeah, my relationship is so great, we don't have fights or we don't have strong disagreements. Well, that's not necessarily a
Yeah.
characteristic of a healthy relationship.
Right. Right.
You were talking about college, and I had a roommate, who I'm still very good friends with now, but we lived together for, um, not quite a year in college, and, I was a bit more neat and put together, and he was not.
Mhm.
And so the compromise that I thought we could, because he would take his clothes off and his clothes would be all over the place, and I'm in a dorm room, right? So I'm like, there's only so many places these clothes can go. So we talked a little bit about it. This was my way of kind of starting, and I said, "Hey, we're gonna put your clothes in a corner, and you can keep them there all week.
Uh-huh.
But on weekends, you either have to put them in the closet, you have to do. I don't care what you do, like wash them, do something, but like once a week, you have to do something with it." And so I started calling it the corner of despair. And so, like, if it wasn't to be done, I'd say, hey, Brian, despair is getting pretty big. You might want to do something about despair here. The the funniest thing for me is I don't remember what precipitated this, but something happened and I got really pissed. And so one night I threw all his clothes in the hall. I'm like, all right, you didn't do it.
Yeah.
Like, you're not living up to your side of the bargain here.
Mhm.
So as opposed to having the conversation more of a mature thing, I was 18, so obviously not very mature. I threw all his clothes in the hallway. I'm like, well, I'll teach him a lesson. I'll have to ask him about that because I don't remember. I wonder what his memory of it is, and if it's the same as mine. And B, I don't remember what happened as a result of that. Like, did he just say, "Yeah, you're right," or was he pretty pissed, as I would have been if someone threw all my shit in the hallway?
Yeah. I started dating Allison when we were in college. This your corner of despair reminds me. And I remember being in her dorm room and she had her closet door open, but she had a roommate and their closet door was open and there was so much the clothing was just pouring out of the closet. Like beyond, the door's open and the clothes are they've flown out past the open door. And she goes, "Oh," and I just see her get on her hands and knees and just push like a one of those I don't know what you call those Tonka trucks that like a front loader that just pushes all the and then she just yeah, and she slams it, and I go like, "Oh god, you're really messy." And she goes, No, no, it's Allie, my roommate." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, now we're married, and I know exactly whose whose clothes those were."
Just trying to make a good first impression, Dave. It worked.
She had a closet of despair, which is now my closet.
That's great. So you mentioned this. So we just talked about number 5. Number 6 is overcoming gridlock. And this is more of those kind of addressing those more deep rooted types of
Mhm,
conflict
mhm.
and identifying strategies to do so.
And I think this is one where therapy is of value. If you have stuff going on that you don't feel capable of handling, then get support. There's nothing wrong with getting support. I don't think you have to be able to solve every problem in your relationship. right? But you should be sort of actively looking, auditing your behavior and your relationship and going like, there's a dynamic here, and let's take steps to figure out what that like how to navigate it.
Yeah, I think the key word that stood out for me here for this one is, this is something that requires you to do some unpacking. And yeah, therapy in a relationship is certainly helpful. I think of what we do in our coaching practice. This is something we help professionals and leaders do. I had a conversation today with a president of a company that I've worked with for a number of years, and we were talking about some just difficulties he's having at work with other leaders. And ultimately, and this is not news to him, the issue is, well, he doesn't address it. The
Hmm.
issue, he gets frustrated
Hmm.
at them, maybe even blows up a little bit and then moves on.
Hmm.
So then trying to again have the conversation that, well, why are you doing that? How do you address it afterwards? Do you address it afterwards? And what do you do to prevent that from happening in the first place? Why is this the way that you react to things? That would be an example of how you help someone maybe unpack some of that from a
Yep.
organizational perspective.
Yeah, and it is a difficult. I mean, it's typically a it's oftentimes a very difficult journey that people don't. The challenge is people oftentimes don't feel prepared to deal with their own stuff. Like, if I unpack this, it's going to be uncomfortable, and so creating a dynamic in your relationship where you can talk about what those things are. I guess I'm just pausing on it because I think it is way easier said than done. You know what I mean? One's just like, oh, that's a fun. We're going to create a love map. Let's go talk about our relationship. And this one is deeper.
Yeah, because obviously if people knew A, that they were doing these things, and B, what to do, then they probably wouldn't do them.
Mhm. Yeah.
But there's so much of what we do that is um just instinct
Mhm.
based
Mhm.
on who we are as a person and based on our experiences, that if you don't have someone there to challenge you to think through things differently, then why would you do anything differently?
I think one of the things that stands out to me in unhealthy relationships as it relates to this gridlock, right? We think about gridlock like it's just interpersonal friction, but oftentimes it's influenced by your own stuff. In unhealthy relationships, sometimes they work because both people are willing to tolerate the other person's shit. We're both,
Yeah.
we're both addicts. I might be like, okay, you're gonna let me drink if I let you smoke, and let's just not talk about the things that we're doing that we're not proud of,
Yeah.
right? And being able to go like, hey, let's get through this together is a big step.
Yeah. In my relationship with my wife, when I think about this, an example that comes to mind for me was when my second kid, my youngest, was a baby. So having two kids, you know, trying to manage through. So he was born April of 2020. So right at the you know onset of COVID, and then so being a baby during COVID when things were shut down, a lot fewer options. Like it certainly got to me, just the stress of living through that situation with two little kids. And I remember thinking, like, me getting really frustrated with the kid, with the baby, which, a crying baby in the middle of the night, it's likely to happen, at least for me. But I felt myself like getting just ridiculously kind of over the top frustrated. And then over time, through conversations with my wife, I was figuring out I'm just really unhappy as I was snapping with lots of people, with kids, with her. And really, those were the three people I was seeing most. There wasn't a lot else happening. And it just took me some time to figure out, well, my fuse is much slower than or much shorter than it normally is, in part just because I am unhappy in
Mhm.
this current environment because I can't go do things that I want to go do. The things that I want to go do aren't open, or there's something else happening that prevents me from being able to do it. Okay, last one, number 7 of 7, create shared meaning. So when I was reading this one, it's kind of like, what are the hallmarks? What's the culture of the relationship like?
Mhm. Mhm.
Is an easy way to describe it.
Yeah, this is kind. You think about like the seven principles. This sort of buttons up the first one, love mapping, right? You're sort of saying like, who are we? Who am I? And what is the journey that we've been on together? And then the last one here is like, what is our relationship? Right? You want to, for a relationship to work, I think you have to elevate the relationship above the people. So, what does this relationship mean? Like, what are we doing together? What are our goals for this connection that we have? What does this future look like for us? And the more you can be aligned in that, then you're more willing to have the friction and you're more willing to towards each other because you have this story that you're telling.
Yeah,
And that,
there's something greater that's keeping you together.
yeah, yep, yep.
Do you have some of these with Allison or just with your nuclear family of 4? What are examples of those in your household?
I think that there's things, yeah, like so for example, we've really talked a lot about like how do we create an environment where like on Sundays, like the one that stands up to me is Sundays, I try to make a big breakfast so that because I like the idea of like this is what we do every Sunday.
Mhm.
And when the kids are in college and they're whatever, they're 20, I want them to want to come home for Sunday because dad's gonna make a breakfast. Like I want, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to create things like that. Or, we like love the idea of getting a house in the mountains one day because like that's where we go to vacation. Like a home base
Yeah.
outside of we live because that would be a way for us to connect. So
Mhm.
those are the big things we do. Every year, we go on a bike ride as a family. Right now, we're buying not, we're renting tandem bikes, and we go like on a 3-day tour, which is like a cool. I hope this will be the third year we've done it. I hope in the future they think about like, look how we did this active stuff together as a family. What about you?
I think for us, it's a couple of things. Like, I think for me personally, with my kids, um, I will take them usually on either Saturdays or Sundays, so it's a weekend thing. I go grab coffee, I take them with me, and they get some sort of sweet treat coming with me. So we do donuts or something, then I get a coffee that I want, and everyone's happy. We do a dinner table thing during the week, and this is something my wife instituted. It's just having a conversation about it's not a conversation, it's like the telephone game. My kids think it's great. So today we did it, and my 4-year-old's like, you know, Evelyn's a poopy pants, and then you have to go around play telephone, and then Evelyn, who's the last one, has to say, assuming everyone heard it correctly, that she's
Mm.
poopy, pants, and everyone rolls and thinks it's funny. We play a question game also at dinner time. Well, everyone gets to say, ask a question. Everyone has to answer with what's your favorite thing, like your favorite movie, what's your favorite food, what's your favorite thing that happened to you today, things like that, just to generate conversation.
Mhm.
So that's help. I think that's helpful for the family. And then I would say, as far as rituals for me and Jen, especially before we had kids, there were certain things around like holidays come to mind most for me. And that's also because I think that's something I learned from my family growing up. Like a
Mhm.
Christmas thing, there was rituals as it related to Christmas tree decorating and things like that. So we still go to my parents' house, and my kids now help decorate my parents' Christmas tree, which
Yep.
was a big deal in my
Mhm.
household growing up for us to do it, and sometimes cousins and friends would be around to help.
And you
So, yeah.
watch Amazing Race together.
Amazing Race, correct, correct, we do that. Um, and now you said another one is her parents play, rummy. They played rummy growing up a lot. I never played it, so and this was probably when our oldest was born, and we were just hanging out at home a lot more. We played rummy, so we probably play rummy once or twice a week. We
Oh,
bring cards now with us when we go on vacation, and if there's some downtime, or if we're sitting on a train or something like that, or on an airplane, we'll do that too. So,
yeah. Trying to think of other things that Allison and I do, like without if I took the family out of it, what are things that we do? And we watch. There's certain shows that we watch together, and if one of us watches them without the other one, then that's like a major sin.
yeah.
Uh, and we do it's part like YouTube has been a major bonding thing for us because we'll
Oh
react.
yeah, yeah, definitely for you too.
That is like to me, it's a shockingly healthy thing for our relationship. Like
Yeah.
when we're not doing it, Like, you don't it's rare that we sit down for an hour or hour and a half and share what we think about something. You're sort
Mhm.
of forced to do that, and so it's been really good for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine that's great.
Mhm.
Well, I guess one last point I'll make for this, as far as kind of having applications outside of relationships, I think that, again, easy correlation to just creating culture, meaningful culture at work.
Mhm.
So, what type of organization do you want to work in as a leader? What can you do to cultivate that? And then, what are the symbols or the activities or the events that reinforce it?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. If you're applying this for a relationship or work, it's really not about what are the specific behaviors that you like. Do you have to do breakfast? But it is thinking about what's the culture or the vibe I want to create in my house with my, and then how do I act in alignment with that, or am I acting in alignment with that?
So, I guess in closing here, I don't know if I've answered this question yet, but which one do you think comes most naturally to you? Which one are you most likely to engage in with in your marriage?
I think the nurturing fondness and admiration. I
Yeah.
think I am. Uh, I think I'm pretty communicative about that.
I think for me it's probably the last one. If I have to go
Mhm,
through the list again, it's the
mhm.
shared meaning and having experiences that are important for me and Jen, me and my family, and me and my extended family. I think, just reinforcing those types of things is something that I probably do most naturally. And it also helps because I'm someone who's going to convene people most. And so we get to do what I want to do. So it helps with the controlling side too.
You can control the vibe or the
That's
culture.
right. That's right.
That was
Uh,
good. I'm glad we went through this. I'm just so convinced that there's such longevity around these principles. I really believe that if I was doing couples counseling again, I would default to sharing these principles. You know, I think it's great.
yes. Again, so much of what's here is just an innate part of my practice at work as well that I would not have known necessarily came from Gottman
Mhm. Mhm.
before having dove a bit deeper into all of this. And so he certainly has been an impact here across a variety of different fields.
Yeah. Good.
All right. Well, I'd be curious to hear from others, either in comments or in emails to us, which one of these comes most naturally to you, which one of these seven principles comes most naturally to you, and which ones are the biggest struggle. So if you have anything to share, of course, please share on the comments section wherever you find us. And you can, of course, find us on YouTube and anywhere you get podcasts. You can also email us at shrinkspaceshow@gmail.com. In the meantime, please look for us on social media platforms. Follow. We're doing a lot there as well. So keep it up.
Thanks, Rob.
Later, Dave.